In lecturette 4, we're going to talk about equilibrium. Okay, so we're wrapping up the inner ear. After this, we're leaving the ear. We're going to get into the eye. But equilibrium is a state of balance regarding our position of our bodies in three-dimensional space. Okay, so let's get started. Now, I want to show you folks this organ of the inner ear again. So we already did the cochlea. We're done. Now, there's something called the vestibular apparatus, and the vestibular apparatus is made out of two structures, right? So this first structure here, this is the vestibule, and what vestibule means is a doorway or an entryway, which is what you can see here. And this entryway also now leads to these canals, right? So these canals are called the semicircular canals, and they are responsible for letting your brain know, hey, where is my body when I'm moving? And that's what it means to have rotational acceleration. And there's a sensory organ in here called cristae or crista. Now the vestibule, this area here, the entryway, this is responsible for something called linear acceleration, right? So linear acceleration is you're not moving, but let's say you're in a very fast car. I remember the first time I was in a Porsche and they gunned it. My head was, I was still sitting straight, but man, did I feel myself go whoop, right? That's linear acceleration. When you folks go to Great America, not everybody went to Great America, amusement parks, theme parks, right? Where you have those big rides where you're the drop zone and then you're dropping from, I don't know how many meters, really, really fast in 2 seconds. Your head's still straight, not moving, but you can feel that acceleration. And that, and your head position as well. And those are facilitated by a sensory organ called otoliths. Now, let's do semicircular canals first. And so the semicircular canals, you can see up here in our picture is that we have 3 of them. And I don't want to rehash the anatomy, but I will tell you all 3 canals right now. And I'm not going to test you specifically on each canal, but we do have a superior semicircular canal, and we have the horizontal, and then we have one called the posterior semicircular canal. And what the semicircular canals are doing in regards to the structure is they're being oriented in 3D, 3-dimensional space, because we live in a 3-dimensional world, right? Right? Because we have the x-axis, boom, we have the y-axis, and then you have the z-axis coming straight at you. And so these canals then tell us what our body is doing and how it's moving, right? Now, in the semicircular canals, here's the sensory organ, and they're positioned right at this area called the ampulla. An ampulla is just a widened area of a tube. And here, this is your cristae. Okay, cristae is plural and the crista is singular. Now, this is what the sensory organ looks like. Now, remember, the entire inner ear is filled with fluid, and the fluid is called endolymph, and that's an anatomical term. But I want to talk physiology. Okay, so look at how this cristae is structured. Now, you're going to have liquid in here. Okay, all liquid, but look at the hair cells. Do you see how the hair cells are connected to this gelatin mass? That's what I care that you folks know. You don't need to know cupula, but just know that this thing here is a gelatin mass, jelly. So here we have fluid, and fluid is fine for our purposes. It is called endolymph. Some of you folks memorize that for anatomy, so let's use that term. Endolymph, we can call it fluid. And if I now tilt my head, you can see this person is shaking their head no, right? Depending on the way your head is moving, this is why it's rotational acceleration, is that you're going to activate one of these cristae. And so here, if I tilt my head in a certain way, gravity is going to move the gelatin mass much like a paintbrush. And in doing so, what's going to happen to the stereocilia of this hair cell? It's gonna bend. This is the exact same mechanism as hearing. I'm not gonna redo it for you folks again, but it is the exact same thing. Okay, so the hair on the hair cell bends. Yes, that leads to depolarization of hair cell. I just said I wasn't going to do this, and here I am. Okay, I can't help myself. Okay, so depolarization of the hair cell. Okay, hair cell releases neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters bind to primary sensory neuron, and then we're going to send the signal straight to the cerebellum. Uh-oh, 2 R's, 1 R. One R. Cerebellum. That says cerebellum. You write it down correctly. Don't follow me. I'm not being a good role model right now. Okay? Right? So this now, I just want to reiterate. Semicircular canals. This is allowing us to have or sense rotational acceleration. Okay? So the head is going to be moving up and down, tilting and nodding our head. Yes, that's from these superior canals, right? If I put my ear to ear like this, right? So if I tilt my head over like a stretch, tilt my head over to the other side, that's another, that's the posterior semicircular canals. And then what this picture is showing is rotation, right? Shaking your head no. Rotation that's measured in the horizontal canals, okay? Now, all right, let's talk about these otoliths that live in the vestibule. So remember, the otoliths are the sensory receptor that are going to allow us now to be able to detect or determine our body in space in regards to their linear acceleration. And I gave the example, if you're in a fast vehicle and they gun it and all of a sudden you're going from 0 to 100 miles per hour in 2 seconds, your head is not being tilted in any way, but you can feel that movement, okay? And then it also allows you to feel your head position. And so the otoliths are the sensory organ, and this is now measuring when the body is static or not moving. Rotational acceleration with the semicircular canals, that's different because you're actively nodding your head, you're actively jiggling around. Vestibule and the otoliths is when I, for example, tilt my head down and it stays down. Okay, I'm not actively jiggling it, which is a different motion. Okay, all my kinesiologists, you say yes, yes. Okay, so here we go. Now, look at what's happening. Oh my God, I love these. So look at the hair cells. It's the same mechanism, people. Okay, the patterns are the same. I am still embedded in some jelly-like membrane. Okay, we're just going to call this jelly, and that's fine. Okay, now I want you folks to memorize this word otoliths. Okay, otoliths are crystals. And these otoliths are embedded inside of the jelly. Okay, now if you tilt your head forward, the weight of those crystals cause the crystals to move forward. But guess what? They are embedded in the jelly. And so they move the jelly. They move the jelly in the direction that your head is tilted and being held statically. Static means in a static state, not moving. Okay. I know we move our head first and then we keep the head standing still. Same thing when you're sleeping on the bed, right? When you move over to your side and sleep on your side, you're staying there. And so your otoliths bending the hair cells, that's going to signal now for the hair cells to depolarize and send that signal here. And this is your primary sensory neuron. Again, going where? To the cerebellum. Okay? This is how we know where our body is in space. Now, I want to tell you folks something and why I'm all bent on these otoliths. I'm not big on having you folks memorize terms you're not going to use. Okay? However, odorless, I want you folks to know, is because these crystals, for whatever reason, sometimes they can come off of the jelly and start floating. And that is not good, okay? Because look at where the vestibule is. If you have the crystals come up free of this jelly, remember, the entire inner ear is filled with endolymph, which is just a liquid. It can start to migrate. And guess where sometimes where it migrates? It starts to migrate in the semicircular canal. This causes a condition called vertigo. And if you don't know what vertigo is, it's when, for different reasons, you can have a spinning. Like all of a sudden, you're in a room and you start to spin. And it can be because of a virus. It can be because of a vitamin B deficiency. But the number one reason why people have vertigo is because the otoliths become unglued from the jelly and they start to migrate and they start to touch the cristae and start to bend the cristae in here. Okay. And so if you are inappropriately bending the hair cells that reside and inside the semicircular canals, you're going to start to have the entire room spin. So this is I have vertigo. This runs in my family, but you're standing still, but the room is spinning, much as if you've now spun yourself around and around and around very, very fast 100 times and stop. That spinning of the room is what happens when the otoliths can go in here. And then you have to go to a therapist and they have to tilt your head in certain ways depending on where the otolith went into. Did it go into the superior canal? Did it go into the posterior canal? Did it go into the horizontal canal? And they have to figure that out. And then they have to move your head in certain ways to get that otolith out of there. Okay. Janet Jackson, remember that lecture? Famous dancer, she has something like a type of positional vertigo. So imagine having to do all that physical activity, having your otoliths move around and get into that canal, but still have to dance and be very coordinated. LeBron James, famous NBA basketball player, also has a positional vertigo, right? So this is this positional vertigo caused by these otoliths coming into the canals is a very common condition. All right, that is it. We are leaving the ear. We will be going into the eye. Lecture at 5.